Welcome to the Retirement Roadmap by SHP Financial, a podcast empowering today's retirees and pre-retirees to make well-informed financial decisions that will help you spend more time living and dreaming than worrying and wondering. Join me, Matthew Peck, along with my co-hosts, Derek Gregoire and Keith Ellis, as we share actionable financial strategies and insights, as well as interview top thought leaders in the world of finance, accounting, and estate planning. This is all aimed at preparing you for the retirement you've always dreamed of. Our high-quality holistic planning process has helped thousands of families retire and create what we like to call the ripple effect. The Retirement Roadmap is your guide to financial freedom. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. Welcome back to the SHP Retirement Roadmap and the thrilling conclusion to what the Federal Reserve is going to do after the failure of the local regional banks, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. I'll be your host today, Matthew Peck. And as we left off, the Federal Reserve had a very difficult choice to make. Were they going to pause their interest rates because something had broke in the financial system? They had continued to raise rates all the way through 2022, raising rates at some of the fastest velocity or speed, or raising them higher than they have done in 40 years. So much so that there was a breaking of the system. Banks, these stayed, what you would think, these sort of stayed businesses, and you'd expect crypto to fall, but now banks were falling, panics were happening, but yet at the same time, inflation was still an issue. Inflation, which had run rampant from mid-2021 to then, was still an issue. So what was the Fed going to do? Was it going to raise rates at the risk of obviously a recession, but also future bank concerns, which had now spread globally because Credit Suisse and some of the other European banks started to have issues or concerns? Or were they going to still raise interest rates because inflation was the bigger concern? And don't worry about the banking issues, it is contained. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have our answer. Chairman Powell raised interest rates 25 basis points, the federal funds rate to 4.75 to 5% is the range right now. And so, which there's not been that high since October of 2007. So now we're pushing 15 to 16 years since we've seen rates this high. And people are talking about how it's the end of easy money, about how the past decade was just such an anomaly when it comes to the great financial crisis into COVID and low interest rates. Is it a new era? We shall see. But to conclude again to part two is that Chairman Powell raised interest rates, stating that inflation was the greater enemy, stating that whatever that bank issues were have been contained and are the lesser of the two evils. But interestingly enough, they are related. Well, of course they're related, but here's my point, is during his statement, Chairman Powell mentioned about how the very bank runs, the very issues that were happening to these banks actually is doing the Federal Reserve's job. Because the Federal Reserve wants to make sure that, again, inflation gets under control. Well, what leads to inflation is business activity. And in most circumstances, business activity is spurred by lending, where banks are lending to homeowners to buy the next property, or businesses to start a business or to invest here or there. Well, the minute that those bank runs happened and they started to have panics and there was just these withdrawals, like I said about how in part one, about how withdrawals are just as simple as swiping left or swiping right nowadays. There were these bank runs happening, some, as I said, to literally close a bank or break it, whereas other ones, you had very jittery depositors. And so now these bank people would be like, okay, well, we have to hoard cash a little bit just in case there's the mob or whatever comes to our bank. Well, if these banks are sort of hoarding cash, well, that means that they're not lending it out, which means that economic activity is slowing down or will slow down as a result of it. In other words, as I said, the federal, by the issues that the banks were having are also doing the Fed's job of curbing economic activity, which in turn will curb inflation. So that is where we are. Interest rates, they did raise the interest rates, but he did mention that since the bank issues were doing the job of the Federal Reserve, as of right now, they do not foresee having to tighten or raise interest rates anymore, or at least for the foreseeable future. So on one hand, we might have turned a corner. All of this buildup and this thrilling conclusion, as I said, very well may be the beginning of the next stage of economic activity, or of kind of where the markets may be from now, or just hopefully more certainty as to the overall direction of the economy, and now focusing on things of recession and trickle-down effects and everything else along those lines, which, of course, we will be diving into in a couple weeks from now as our quarterly market update. For all of our listeners, you're probably well aware, at least I hope you are. I'm not too bored by it. The fact that every quarter we put out our quarterly market update with some great information from our friends from JP Morgan, as well as some of the other periodicals that we subscribe to. And so now, since we are in a new landscape, what will the future hold? What will the next couple of weeks hold? And what are some of the economic data that are going to be as a result of the banking issues, as well as the increase in interest rates that just happened? So this part of the story is now completed. Thank you so much for listening, and be well.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Roadmap podcast by SHP Financial. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you've liked what you heard, please share the show. Create your own little ripples so we can help even more people with their retirement goals. If you want access to all past interviews, including notes, resources, and exclusive content from SHP Financial, visit shpfinancial.com/podcast. Thanks again for joining us on the Retirement Roadmap podcast. And for all the attorneys out there, disclaimers and disclosures, I'm just going to put on my super serious voice and add our own. No statements made during the Retirement Roadmap podcast shall constitute tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own legal or tax professional on any such matters. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Our investment advisory services are offered through SHP Wealth Management LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance sales are offered through SHP Financial LLC. Our advisors and insurance reps may offer clients advice and/or products from each entity. No client is under any obligation to purchase any insurance product.